Hello, welcome to another video. My name is Dahlia. This is Novel Idea. I'm here to discuss all of the books I read in September. This is my September reading wrap-up. One of the first books I read this month is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I am not going to do a review for this book. I don't really have much to say about it. It's basically a poor man's Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, to be totally honest. I really just don't have that much to say about this book, so I don't know why I read it. I really don't. It was fine. It was just totally fine. Another book I read this month is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I know that this is a booktube darling, and this is probably a very contentious thing to say, but I thought it was totally fine. I don't have anything bad to say about it. It was very readable. It's a very heartfelt story about a boy who lives with his Vietnamese mother and grandmother, and they obviously have PTSD from their experience during the war in Vietnam. It's a coming of age story. It's a beautiful story, but I don't have that much to say about it. When I read a book and I don't have that much to say about it, it makes me feel as though the book was a little bit unremarkable. I'm hesitant to say that about this book in particular because I know that it is like one of those books on booktube that people seem to love. I just don't have that much to say overall. The other book I read in September was the new Sally Rooney novel, Beautiful World, Where Are You? I personally very much enjoyed it. It was very much up my alley. You know, I don't feel disappointed by this book. I know there was a lot of anticipation for it. I'm sure Sally Rooney herself was under immense pressure to come up with something as beloved as Normal People. Yeah, I really enjoyed this novel. I thought it contained a lot of the Sally Rooney-esque elements that we all know and love. Existential dread. Her characters always seem exhausted to me. They just seem constantly exhausted by life. I'm always there for that relatable content, so I thoroughly enjoyed it. This book follows two characters, Alice and Eileen. Alice is clearly based off of Sally Rooney. She's a successful writer, novelist. Eileen, on the other hand, is someone who seemingly had every, opportunity available to them. She was a very good student in school. She ends up working in kind of an entry-level job at a literary magazine. And the two of them are very close friends. They maintain an email correspondence where they really talk about anything, and I personally felt like these were some of the best parts of the book in true Sally Rooney fashion. Includes these budding romances. Alice is at the beginning of a relationship with someone she met on a dating app named Felix, whereas Eileen is sort of in this cryptic relationship with this guy Simon, who she's known since she was a child, which is kind of similar to Normal People. I would say that Sally Rooney as a writer really excels in that specific space of the beginning of a relationship where things are so cryptic and up to interpretation. She's just so good at capturing that moment in time and that place between two people, where they're at that precipice of, are we more than friends? Are we just seeing each other casually? What are we? I also think that's probably why she includes it so heavily in her novels. Yeah, I like Sally Rooney. I do. I'm not a mega fan or anything like that, but I think she's just so readable and her characters are so relatable and I enjoy the stories. So I liked this. I think I gave it a 3 or maybe a 3 or 4, a solid, good book. So yeah, thanks Sally. Thank you, Sally. This month I also read Second Place by Rachel Cusk. This book, I'm not going to pretend as though I understood the entire novel and every sentence contained in it. I definitely didn't. A lot of what she was saying seemingly was beyond me or just nonsensical in my opinion. My thoughts on this as a result are a little bit convoluted, discombobulated, whatever. The more I've thought about it, the more I've come to sort of appreciate it. It's kind of like stuck with me more than I thought it would, given how confusing I felt the reading experience was. So this book is different from her other books in the sense that it does have more of a plot. Standard arc that you would expect of a regular novel, which is, again, a little bit different from her other works, specifically in the Outline trilogy. Another interesting thing about this novel is that she points out at the end, in a kind of like end note of sorts, that this is actually based on a memoir by Mabel Lewin, who was a patron of the arts, apparently, according to her Wikipedia page. Apparently, she had this kind of cottage or second place where she would allow artists to come and work. Specifically, she had D.H. Lawrence, the author, come and work at this residence. I guess that's the inspiration for the book. I feel that Rachel Cusk included this to say that this is more of a pure fiction novel than my other novels, because I think that people do try and connect Rachel Cusk very intimately with her work. So perhaps this was her way of saying, like, this is actually fictional and it's not based on me as a person. It surely seems to contain some, Cuskian elements. Maybe we can say that. The novel follows this character. We only know her by her first initial of her first name as M. She is addressing the story to this unknown character named Jeffers. The artist who comes to visit her goes by the name of L. M in this novel has a cottage of some sort, and she lives there with her husband. She also has a second place, like a designated kind of cabin or lodge that she reserves for artists to come and stay there and work on their art. However, you quickly learn that there are strings attached. In M's situation, throughout time, she came to associate L, the painter, with this certain amount of reverence that clearly had built up in her mind. When she finally invites him to come and work at this second place of hers, she ends up having sort of, I believe, in her mind, some preconceived notions about how he's going to be towards her. She does place an undue amount of meaning upon, like, this random guy's opinion. She becomes totally subservient and just wants his approval constantly, even though he's clearly kind of an asshole. It's just like this cringy episode to read about. A lot of weird shit takes place. Like, at one point, her daughter's boyfriend is reading aloud his new novel that he wrote, which is like some high fantasy book. It takes like 4 hours for him to read the whole thing. Meanwhile, M has really nothing to do. She talks about being idle a lot, and I think that's probably part of the problem, that she has all this time to just like think about whether L is being productive, what he thinks about her, and so forth. It's just a bit of a clusterfuck, the whole book. I don't know, it was weird. I will say you still do get a lot of those very, classic Rachel Cusk themes, personhood, and how some of that is compromised with motherhood, art as a form and its value. I don't really know what to think about this book. At the same time, it has kind of lingered in my mind, so I don't know. It was an interesting reading experience. It's a short novel. It was a strange experience for me. The final book I read this month is Lila by Marilynne Robinson. Marilynne Robinson, you have my freaking heart. You have my heart. Oh my god, what an outstanding follow-up to Gilead. Probably one of the most thematically sad, tender, heartfelt novels I have ever read. Her characters are so complex. They're so reflective. Lila, for those of you that don't know, becomes the wife of to John Ames, who is the pastor of the town Gilead, which is a small fictional town in Iowa. This story details Lila's own upbringing and how she comes to meet the pastor, whereas in Gilead we learn about John Ames's story. Lila, turns out, has one heck of a freaking story. She has had a rough go of things. She was abandoned by her family as an infant or a child. She comes to be rescued by this woman named Doll, who herself is not a very well-to-do person. She's also kind of this nomadic character, lives a very transient sort of lifestyle, getting work where she can, and the two of them continue on working where they can, finding, places to sleep and so forth. Eventually, Lila has to go off on her own. She has a short stint in a brothel. Unbeknownst to her, she makes her way to Gilead, Iowa, where she eventually meets the character John Ames. Marilynne Robinson is just one of the best writers there is. I truly believe that her ability to get so far deep into the minds of her characters is second to none. Probably the overarching theme or emotion that governs her life is shame. Experiences all different kinds of shame, whether it's her being economically at a disadvantage, educationally, just the fact that she was, born without a family to look after her and raise her. All of these things weigh very heavily on her mind, and she's very aware of her ignorance, yet she's also a deeply intuitive and, in fact, quite a bright person. When she comes to meet the pastor, she meets him with all of this personal baggage, yet he kind of is able to see through it and to her. And it's this really beautiful story of, how this woman has to sort of struggle to become comfortable in her own skin. She has to reconcile faith with the things that she knows about other people's lives, people that she cares about. Just such a beautiful, tender story, and I truly recommend it if you have not checked it out. This is a really outstanding follow-up to Gilead, and it colors in so much about Lila that obviously we wouldn't have the privilege of knowing. I loved it. It really makes me want to read more Robinson, but it also makes me want to go back and reread Gilead, even though I already read it this year. So that says, to me, that says a lot. Yeah, that's everything I read this month. Apologies, I know these reviews are short and very bare bones, but I don't think people want to hear me ramble forever, so I'm sparing you that. I hope you enjoyed this wrap up, and thank you so much for watching.